Big Ten Mathematics 101. Big 9 plus Michigan State plus Penn State. Add Rutgers, Maryland, Nebraska. Welcome USC, UCLA equals 16. No, still Big Ten. Hi everyone, this is Will O'Toole welcoming you back from our 5 or 6 week hiatus from because of summer vacation. Howard needed a break from me. And I do want to welcome you back and thank you for joining us. In the 5 or 6 weeks since we did our last show, lots have transpired, especially off the field, particularly in college football and the Ncaa. And of course, we had the recent passing 5 weeks ago of the great Bill Russell, who is America's greatest winner of all time, if you think about the major sports. And I used to kind of, I did some comparisons between Russell and Burrow, and originally had Burrow as the winner. And then I realized, you know what, I should add in some other things like regular season. Obviously, I didn't really add high school. Because I didn't know what Burrow, whether he had a high school team or not. But for the thrill and the fun and the debate of this argument, I added in the fact that Russell won in high school. Of course, he won with the great Dons team of San Francisco with Coach Phil Wolpert in the 50s. Then he goes and wins at the Australian Games or the Melbourne Games in the 1956 Olympics. And then, of course, he moves on to make the Boston Celtics, along with Red Auerbach, but mostly on the shoulders of Bill Russell, the great Boston Celtic dynasty of the 50s, 60s, and you can even argue to the 70s, and made the Celtics what they are today. One of outside the Lakers and the Yankees and the Canadians and what we, in football, the Green Bay Packers, and probably the New England Patriots, what we would all consider dynasties in each respective sports. So I want to touch on that. I also want to talk about the Yankees. I know I feel like I've been a hex for you Yankee fans because I said, don't worry. They're unbelievable. In fact, I remember back in right before the All-Star game, I was telling all you Yankee fans what an incredible team they really have. And I still think they have the ability to not just get to the postseason, but to the World Series. Now, I know all of a sudden I can feel the slings and arrows coming at me, but we'll talk a little bit about the Yankees today and how things maybe have gone south for them, even though they still maintain a significant lead. Even four games is a lot in baseball, 3 or 4 games. That's a lot, especially with how the Yankees, we've seen them perform early in the year. And even with this recent losing season, they still were able, a couple weeks ago, put 5 games in a row, winning streak. So I don't think you really have anything to worry about. The Mets, of course, doing very well. Hopefully they'll stay healthy to get into the postseason. And I would like to focus on this whole, what's really transitioning and transforming the NCAA, particularly college football. So with that, let's just turn to really a toast to Bill Russell. Now, I did an article a few weeks ago, so it's still pretty much fresh in my mind about the greatness of Russell. Now, I'm not a Celtic fan, never was a Celtic fan. In fact, I never liked the Celtics to a certain extent. Did like Bird. I guess what it is with the Celtics and the NBA, with particularly Bird, he basically rescued, he and Magic Johnson, let's face it, they did rescue the NBA, and now it's become the game. And there might be some arguments with football fans and stuff, but it's definitely the game. It's the game that the kids play. I'm sorry, it is. And I know we have all kinds of stats, but just go anywhere, you can see a kid with a basketball more than you can with a baseball bat or a mitt. And there are a plethora of basketball leagues and travel leagues and all the rest of them. Obviously, one thing that basketball has going for it, it can be played in confined areas. It can be practiced really by yourself. and any kind of tricks that you might do with basketball, dribbling, behind the back, and all the rest of it. It's all for practice, and it just makes you better for when you get on the court. It's just amazing kinds of things. It's a great sport, obviously. But with Russell, with basketball, here's what I did. I kind of changed my format, and I didn't think about it at first. Burr, he's probably the greatest winner. We'll never see another winner like him in baseball. Lots of reasons. But just a great one. Do you realize that he was in a World Series pretty much every 3 years, and of course, of his baseball career? And I'm talking, and I'm even adding into the lean years when he was still with the Yankees in the 80s and all the rest of it. But if you took him at the guts, Burrow was just incredible. You might as well just have first base etched in or home plate etched in. Yogi Berra was here every year instead of one particular year. You know, Kilroy was here, so was Berra. Berra was here. However, I was thinking about this. Why I think Russell is the greatest winner of all time in American history, in American sports history. First of all, he did it at the college level. He did it at the Olympic level. And he did it at the pro level. And as I stated, he did it at the high school level. As I was just, and I'm just going through these stats real quick, but as I'm going through Russell's stats, I'm not talking about his statistics, points and rebounds and block shots, which were, I know a lot, he'll get a lot of critics about the fact that he didn't score a lot of points, but Russell was all about the team. It's a different game too, but Russell and Orbach really did. They didn't invent, quote unquote, the fast break. They perfected it. And one of the things that Russell was able to do, and I think this is what's missing or what people are missing when you're talking about Russell, is that his block shots weren't done to, let's say, entertain the audience. They were designed to start or initiate fast breaks for the Celtic offense. Too many times we see shot blockers today, and it's a skill I love, and it's intimidating. An offense comes down knowing that there could be a shot blocker on the other end. It may give you second thoughts on shooting a jump shot or going into the lane for a layup and stuff because it could be blocked. But so often, how many times do you see that blocked shot just blocked with no direction? Goes into the stands, or it goes back into, let's say, an offensive player's possession. Russell perfected the fact that he could really block shots to teammates who would start fast breaks, which made the offense for the Celtics so lethal. So that's one thing that I think that people always overlook about Russell, just his effect on a game. And sometimes it's not about scoring points. It's about how you affect the offense or the philosophy of the opposing team. Anyway, here's Russell. And of course, he played with some great players. I know everyone always talks about, well, he had all these Hall of Famers, and I can list some right off the top of my head, and I may be wrong. Yeah, Bailey Howell came in late in his career to help the Celtics win a championship. The Jones, KC, and Sam. You had John Havlicek. And you had Bob Cousy. You had a number of other players that were pieced together. They were very deep, the Celtics, no question about it. But I look at it this way. Why are you criticizing the guy for the sake that he played with great players, or that his coach, or maybe suggestions to his coach about who to get, help them become the Celtic dynasty? Do you realize this? The Celtics, he comes in. Oh, I have to say this. I wanted to save it, but put it this way. He goes from winning high school championships, starts off his first varsity year, sophomore. He couldn't play as freshman way back when in the 50s. They go 14-7, the Dons. But then they go 57-1 and cop 2 NCAA titles. From there, he's drafted by the Celtics, but always wanted to play in the Olympics, which was also occurring. Unfortunately for the Celtics, it did not occur in the summer. It was being held down under. So opposite seasons below the equator. In Australia, their summer is December, January, February, parts of March. And in December, he goes down, wins the Olympics. I believe it was in Melbourne. I think they won 6 games in the Olympics. So you're going about 81-8 in college. Now you win 6 games in the Olympics, plus a gold medal. And then he joins the Celtics in December of 56-57 and leads them to an NBA title. Everyone out there, in fewer than 12 months, he wins an NCAA title, an Olympic gold, and an NBA title. That's incredible. Incredible. And you can say, wow, there weren't that many teams. I don't care. That's still an incredible accomplishment. Here's years. Ready for this? The Celtics were 717-298 during the regular season, during his playing days. And in fact, his last 2 years of coaching, he was 54-28 and 48-34, Bill Russell. And he won 2 titles. Actually, it was only his last 3 years that the Celtics finished in second place. And in fact, his last year in the NBA as player coach, they were in 4th place. They finished 9 games behind the Bullets. The other 2 times they finished in second, they finished, of course, behind the Philadelphia 76ers, who win the title in 1967. Ready for this, though? Every year outside that one, when they went 4-5, that was the only under 500 record that Russell has in the playoffs in his career. They go 90-54 in the playoffs during Russell's career. Add to that the 717 regular season wins. Add that the 81 wins that he had in the NCAA basketball, in his basketball career. And you get a guy who has a winning percentage of 711. And I even added the 6 because I'm not even going to do that now because I forgot about it. And I forgot to add that in, but I don't know how much difference it's going to make, but maybe it moves it up a couple of percentage points. My point is this. He won over 71% of the games he ever was a participant, whether as a coach, a player, or whether just sitting on the bench and being part of the team. 71% of the games. And he won, ready for this, with the exception, 2 NCAA titles, an Olympic gold medal, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 championships in the NBA. Do the math real quick, which I can't. That's 11, 13, that's 14 national titles, or international, if you want to include, want to look at the Olympics that way. Incredible. Bill Russell is another winner we will never see again. Lots of reasons for it, but let's just see him as what he was. Just knew how to win, what it took to win. And as far as career numbers, 15.1 points per game. Average 4 assists, and I'm using Basketball Reference for this. And played 963 games in the NBA. Just missed 1,000. Probably could have played another season in the NBA if he wanted to. Just a marvelous, marvelous player. All right, I'm going to transition a little bit because I kind of want to get as many, let's say, of the sports in. I really want to talk about college football, which has just come in. I did watch a little bit of I watched the Army game, obviously, listened to the Army game last night. They lost a tough one to the Chanticleers of Coastal Carolina. Had an opportunity to win, just bested by a really good team. They have a great quarterback, Coastal Carolina. That being said, I was also watching on the board. I watched Wyoming. Terrific game, Wyoming-Tulsa. I know a lot of fans, they don't know where I'm coming from sometimes when I'm watching college sports. Never turned into the Georgia-Oregon. Glad I didn't turn into the Georgia-Oregon game. And this is where I'm coming from. I did watch the Utah game against Florida. Utah had a couple of opportunities. They fumbled, I think, early in the second half at the goal line. Florida, I think if they had gone in there, probably would have been able to manage the game and win. They did go down to the swamp at the University of Florida, and interception at the goal line with seconds to go. I love I have to be honest with you. I was glad that they went for the win instead of settle for the tie and going to overtime. I don't think they would have beaten Florida in overtime. Just my gut feeling. But think about it this way. Southeast Conference just mauled in all the other games. Alabama just destroyed Utah State. Vanderbilt, 2 weeks ago, destroyed Hawaii in Hawaii. They hadn't scored 60-some-odd points since 1969. I got this from a website or YouTube as I was watching replays of that game. Hadn't scored 60 points, Vanderbilt, since 1969. Who knows what that is? I don't know that it's an indictment against Hawaii, or maybe Vanderbilt is really feeling, let's say, what's going on with the Southeast Conference as they are becoming. Let's face it, the Southeast Conference, and this is where I'm going, it really is a professional minor league conference. And I think this is where the Ncaa is going. I don't even know if the Ncaa is going to look like it does today in 5-6 years, because these mega conferences are just overtaking it. And the NIL, and I think I have this right, it's name, image, and likeness, where the players can go out and really negotiate their own contracts, whether it's be a spokesman for a local car dealership, or wearing all kinds of clothes of a tailor's place, or even going and signing books or cards at a local card or hobby convention, that sort of thing. But the players are making money. And I thought, wow, couldn't believe how much some of the players are making. Can't think of the players right now, but I'm talking six figures. In fact, I believe the Ohio State quarterback went out and got all of his teammates suits or coupons to purchase their own suits. It's incredible. Plus, they're still getting a scholarship. I really think that the age of the scholar athlete has now really, really shifted to the age of the professional athlete, minor league, who takes a few credits going to school. I think that's where it's really going to go. Face it, the players and the media and even fans have been saying, wow, there is a lot of time and devotion that players on scholarship have to give to the teams. And they're saying that they should probably be somehow rewarded for that monetarily, in addition to having a scholarship. It's very tough to keep up your grades and play a major sport. It is a job that I think people don't see. That being said, when the courts said this NIL was permissible, you could see where I think you have to give credit to the SEC and probably the Big Ten. They were most awakened by this. They are seeing things down the road that I think the casual fan is even seeing now, and that is that the players are just going to be paid. Now, might not be paid for by the colleges, but there is going to be things that are going to be set where the players, I mean, we have players right now, University of Miami, I believe, they're making six figures from the NIL. That being stated, I think why the Big Ten went out and signed USC and UCLA is because they see, and it's something that I had talked about in a previous, way back probably in the spring, when Oklahoma and Texas decided to join the SEC, that these big conferences can get so big with memberships, 20 teams. I had it originally as 40 teams probably playing at this level of professionalism, minor league. that they just say, hey, we don't need the NCAA anymore. We can operate this on our own, independently of the other sports. And I really think this is where it's going. And it's not coincidental that Oklahoma and Texas bolt. And I even said at the time, I don't know why they would want to join the SEC from this standpoint. They dominate or could dominate the Big 12. But now they have to fight Alabama, Auburn, Florida, and Georgia. I forgot. I don't want to get you Bulldog fans upset. It's 4 teams that they have to. They were the big dogs in the Big 12. Now they are just part of a dog pack. And I'm not knocking any of the schools, but they're just part of a pack. And each year it's going to be very tough to be the alpha dog in that conference. The Big 10 saw the same thing. And what they smartly did, and we can argue about this but let's just say from a standpoint of marketing and all the rest of it, they went out and they got 2 Pacific Coast teams, both in LA. So now they have a New York market, courtesy of Rutgers. They have the Chicago market, courtesy of Northwestern, Illinois. They have the 2 big boys still of the Big 10 who have made that conference who they are. I'm sorry, it is Michigan and Ohio State. I know that Minnesota had some great teams way back when, but when you think of Big 10, you always think of Michigan and Ohio State because they got their fingers in every sport where they're and I am not criticizing them, but they're good in every sport. Hockey, basketball, football, the money-making sports they're great in. So they went out, the Big 10, they bring in LA market, and they bring in USC, which is one of the premier football dynasties of college football. Now the problem is, will they be too big? But I really think what they're going to do is this. I think that both leagues will probably get like 24 teams, including eventually Notre Dame. And by the way, I watched the Notre Dame game last night. The curse of the peacock, that's all I can say. Now, they've been on NBC since 1990. I know they won their last championship in 88. But I got to be honest with you, Notre Dame fans. The SEC, a couple of these other Big 10 teams, Notre Dame is still down here. Notre Dame is still down here. They can contend, but they're just not right now in the elite. They really struggled last night. That was really a manhandling, especially in the second half by Ohio State. Will they right their ship? Yes. Will they get a look like they did last year? I don't know. Now they got to hope that Ohio State just goes unbeaten. They have to hope that USC goes unbeaten until they play them and a couple other things. But it doesn't look good for Notre Dame starting out of the chute. And I am rooting very hard for their head coach, Marcus Freeman. I think he's a good guy. Anyway, getting back, I really do think here's what you're going to see in the next. And as I've stated before, these conferences still are morphing. We don't know where it's going to be. But right now, I would see within the next 2 years, especially with, oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you this or mention this, is that the NCAA is expanding to 12 playoff teams. Now, that's not without a coincidence of the 2 big leagues in football expanding by leaps and bounds. So I think what's going to happen is this. You're going to have these 2 mega conferences. If the Pac-12 isn't disassembled, it may morph with the Mountain. Bring in, let's say, Boise State, San Diego State, several of those teams. The ACC might also expand, although I don't know who they can actually grab at this point to make them viable. So you might have 4 mega conferences. And I actually believe this, actually 5, because I forgot the Big 12. Maybe the Big 12 morphs with the Pac-12 and they leave, let's say, the Boise States and the Wyomings, shirt I'm wearing right now, they leave them to the Dust Bowl. But I see these 4 leagues playing, and here's what's going to happen. You'll have 4 mega conferences, all the players being paid by some sort of sponsorship with under, let's say, the guidance of the individual schools. All right. There'll be no NCAA, let's say, direction for them. They'll probably establish their own commission, their own bureaucracy, and they will negotiate all of the televising of the regular season games plus the televising of the bowl games. And now the bowl games, put it this way, with the 12 games, you know what's going to happen here. First 4 teams get buys. So that's going to be your championship team. And I don't know whether it's going to be viable. I am sure, though, that the conference commissioners would still love to have a playoff within the conferences, and then the winners get to sit for a round, and then probably the runners-up in those conference would be the second tier from 5, let's say, through 12. All right. And then they would pick at large bids. So if Notre Dame somehow, and I don't think it's really going to happen, if they remain an independent, they can play. If, and I don't really think this is going to happen, a Boise State has an unbeaten record, all right, they may be picked as, let's say, a 12th seed. And they would be on the road playing, anywhere from probably the 5th seed versus the 12th, the 6th versus the 11th, the 7th versus the 10th, and the 8th versus the 9th, one of those type of things. And they'd be playing there. And those home teams would get a choice of where they want to play their games, in their home venue, or they could go to a dome, apparently. So they're already thinking, hey, if Michigan is one of those home teams, do they play in Detroit, in the Dome? If Notre Dame wins, do they play in the Indianapolis Dome? More than likely they will, probably because they can pack more people in, and it would be a sense of neutrality, but still a home game, but also the weather would not interfere. Me, I got to be honest with you. If I was, let's just say, Notre Dame and San Diego State got in as a 12th seed and I'm the 5th seed, I'm playing that in South Bend in December. I want them to freeze. And so it will be interesting from that standpoint, unless, of course, money comes into this and the powers that be, and I'm not going to call them the NCAA, they say, look, if you move the game to Indianapolis and you play in the Dome, we can guarantee you, Notre Dame or whatever, another $20 million independent of what you're getting. They'll take it. So it's going to be, and here's the deal. Why it's going to be very difficult. Let's just say that they have 4 conferences, and each conference winds up with 20 teams. That's 80 teams. It's going to be very, and if one of those, I'm just even thinking, let's just use Coastal Carolina, which is trying to probably work their way into something like this. Do you really think that the schedule's going to work to get Coastal Carolina a game against one of those 4 conference teams? It's going to be difficult, because if you have 20 teams and you have 8 regular season games, let's just say, even if it's 10 regular season games, probably the league bylaws are going to be, you got to meet everybody at least once every 2 years. And every 4 years, it's got to be a home and home. It's going to be very difficult to schedule those other teams. And then what do? And if, let's say, Coastal Carolina loses one of those games, or even loses, let's say, to a conference that they've been able to cobble with the other teams like, a Rice, or let's just say a Wyoming, or even a Boise State, how hard is it going to be for them to really break through? Especially when, if the 4 conferences are dictating policy and the 4 conferences are negotiating the deals, and the 4 conferences are determining where those games are played, and the 4 conferences are determining what members are going to be in. Do you really think they're going to take a Coastal Carolina over, let's say, that's 11-1, over, let's say, a Michigan State that finished 9-3 and didn't play in the championship game? But they have a big win, let's say, over, they went out of conference and let's say they beat Oklahoma in a game that was, let's say they were also 10-2 and let's say made the SEC championship. Do you really think they're going to ignore that Michigan State team for a Coastal Carolina 11-1 or 12-0? So big things are happening in the NCAA. Actually, I shouldn't say big things are happening in the NCAA. Big things are happening in the football conferences. And there is some concern because I'm even thinking this: what happens with the Big East? And I've also have raised this: if the Pac-12 goes under, that frees up the Rose Bowl. It's kind of interesting. Now, who does the Big Ten play? This is why I really think that this is all they are just working out the details, and I think that the bowl games will no longer exist as we see them, and that the bowl games will be called, let's say, the Rose Bowl, signifying this is where the championship's going to be played this year, just like kind of like what they've been doing, the Orange Bowl and all the rest of it. But come New Year's Day, you're probably going to see maybe 8 teams for 4 more spots for the Final Four. And then probably what they'll do, and this will help pro football as well, pro football will probably kind of delay their playoffs by playing one more weekend of a season. I've said that before. And they will put those games there. And probably what you'll see is this, that maybe the week before the NFL playoffs begins, you'll see the college championship played. Or what you might even see is the college championship game played the Monday prior to the Super Bowl. Be really, really interesting. Now, I know that it really does change the landscape. First of all, in terms of anybody who has followed college sports knows there used to be some fun with region by region. You can't even say it's region anymore. Now, when you have teams in New Jersey and on the West Coast, and you're calling it the Big Ten Conference, where the majority of your teams emerge from the Midwest. You can't call it the Southeast Conference when you have teams in the Plain States like Texas and Oklahoma. And getting back to the Big East, they will probably expand eventually too. And it won't be unheard of. As I've said before, you'll probably see a Gonzaga, a St. Louis come in to the Big East. And who cares? It's just the name. It doesn't mean anything. As I've stated before, yeah, Gonzaga's in the Big East. They're east of Tokyo. So it should be interesting. But what happens to the basketball conferences? What happens to them? And I'm almost thinking that there's going to be, even in basketball, 2 tiers of playoffs. It may not be as bad, or it may not. Definitely, I think, for all intents and purposes, you have certain schools that are looking on the outside in right now with the NCAA. And they are all, I'm telling you right now, I am sure that Boise State, and I'm just using them as an example because they've come, they are where I think Coastal Carolina wanted to be. They're banging on the door, trying to get in. I think for a while there, probably they thought they could probably get into the Pac-12. Idaho as a state, it's growing. It's a huge population of people from California coming in. They would have probably been a nice complement to Washington State, Oregon and Washington in the upper Northwest. They had a great football program. Their basketball program is very good. They've gotten to the NCAA tournament, etc. And now, really, Boise State's, you could actually argue, is back to square one. So it should be very interesting. But what I perceive is is probably different than what the bureaucrats are doing with the conferences. But thinking of the future, you're going to have mega conferences. There's no question about it. And where the Big Ten now has 16 teams, they are going to add 20. And then you would probably have, I don't know whether they would break it down into four divisions of 5. There have been people who are saying, no, they should just put all 20 in and just let the first 2 meet. It's just kind of crazy. And this is why I really think, the other thing I really do believe too, why college football might just venture off on its own is simply because the other non-revenue producing sports are going to have a real time with just in transporting the kids. There's going to be a lot of air flights from Purdue all the way out to UCLA. I don't know what they're going to do. The big mega deals of money are probably going to help defray some of the costs from the non-revenue producing sports that each school has. But that's another consideration. And it's almost as if I almost want to believe that if they could and would and should, the Big Ten and the SEC and the other big football playing conferences or schools just say, we're leaving. We're leaving the Ncaa. We're forming our own football venue, our own football league. And then the others have to deal with it. Sounds crazy. I think that's where it's going. All right. We will see, as it's still not done. As I stated before, these conferences are always morphing. What I'm saying today may change tomorrow. You may just see the ACC just being sucked into the Big Ten. And now you have the ACC Big Ten plus the 2 California teams. That would be a real mega conference of like 30 teams overnight. All right. I just figured I'd like to spend a little time with this. Yesterday, I was listening to a radio station. Of course, we all know what one it is. Okay. And a fellow brought up the fact, and I the only reason I'm not knocking the fellow bringing this up, but I do want to state this. The Yankees, yes, they've been in what Yankee fans would consider a free fall. They were at, 71. At one point, the Yankees were, I think right at the All-Star break, I'm going to say that they were 35 games over 500 on August 2nd. All right. They were 70-35. I think they were a little bit higher than that earlier in the summer. All right. But let me just go to the All-Star break. Everything was really doing well for the Yankees. Yeah, here they were. They were 36 games over 500 on Sunday, July 17th. They had just beaten the Red Sox 27-3 in back-to-back wins. 14-1 win, 13-2 win. All right. Coming back from the All-Star break, they've been basically a 500 team, and people have panicked. They did trade. They got Vinatieri from the Royals. They did trade Jordan Montgomery to get a guy, Harrison Bader, who has not played yet, from the Cardinals. Of course, we all know that Jordan Montgomery looks like a Cy Young. Here's the thing. He's 5-0. St. Louis has risen in the standings. If he wins 5 decisions in St. Louis in September, he just may win the Cy Young Award. Don't think it hasn't happened before, because one of the guys I wanted to focus on today was Rick Sutcliffe, who, if you remember, in 1984, he's traded to the Cubbies from the Cleveland Indians and won, I think, 16 of 17 starts and copped the Cy Young. Anyway, just to give you an idea, just getting back, and maybe I'll focus on Sutcliffe a little bit. The Yankees acquired a really good player who the Cardinals could no longer use, and that's Matt Carpenter, not Harrison Bader. Sometimes a new look. He had been released technically by the Texas Rangers. So his relationship with the Cardinals had ended via the Texas Rangers. All right, nothing really transpired for him with the Texas Rangers. You wonder why that club is mired in mediocrity. They let him go. But listen, different circumstances for different players in different situations and different environments. Carpenter immediately comes on to the Yankees. He has an electrifying start with the 6 home runs, and the Yankees continue to win in abundance. And everybody thought that, this one particular caller thought that, or many particular callers thought that the loss of Carpenter has indeed hurt the Yankees. Problem is this. I did a look at Carpenter's record with the Yankees, kind of like what I did with Russell. But when Carpenter was in the lineup, and I did a very quick one. I did it twice over. He's played 47 games for the Yankees. The Yankees were, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt because I was using Baseball Reference. I had him as 21, excuse me. And then I said, well, wait a minute. I missed 3 games. So let's just say that he won 26. The Yankees were only 26-21 with Carpenter in the game. 12 of those games, he served as a pinch hitter, which I didn't realize either. All right. Basically this, with the Yankees before Carpenter, they were 32-13. All right. After 26-21, excuse me, that's what I'm going to do. And since Carpenter's been hurt, they've been 23-18. My whole point is, it's not Carpenter being out. It's just that the Yankees have been flat. And I've mentioned this before. It's too many of these teams are just home runs, whiff, or walk. Nobody's getting on base. And I think that is the biggest reason why the Yankees have been in mired in this mediocrity. They've been poo-pooing batting average for too long. And as I have stressed in many of the programs, you still need a good batting average to have a good on-base percentage, because not too many people can walk 100 times a year to bring an on-base percentage of 350 to 400. All right? So don't worry, Yankee fans. You'll be there. And I owe you Met fans another week, I promise. I just got involved with too many other things which I intended to do. But don't fret, Yankee fans. Unfortunately, you're in good shape. This is Will O'Toole wishing you all a great September, and we'll be back with another show next week. Thanks, Howard, and all of you for joining me.